Danger in the Clouds by John Donnellan. As the sun is getting low in the sky, a young man, 19, scampers up to Joe. He is tall and lanky, somewhat awkward in appearance. He taps Joe on the shoulder.
Oh, hello?
Hello, sir. I would like to ride in your airplane, please.
Well, I was going to park it for the night and get some supper with my friends.
Oh, please, sir, just a little ride. I've never been up in one of these.
Joe scratches his head as he looks the kid over.
All right, but just for a few minutes.
The young man climbs in as Joe spins the prop. The little engine spits and fires up. Joe hops in the rear seat, pulls his helmet and goggles on, hands the other set to his passenger. Joe taxis the airplane out onto the runway, and in moments they are sailing up into the evening skies. A little while later, they come soaring around the field like a fighter plane and buzz the runway, pulling up at the end in a steep left bank, almost rolling over. Joe circles around for another pass, then settles the bird down gently with a perfect three-point landing. They taxi back to the tie-down area, and Joe shuts off the engine. As the two hop out, Joe goes and secures the plane.
Thank you, sir, thank you.
The young man is very excited and starts to run away. Joe hollers at him.
Hey kid, what's your name?
He stops and turns back.
Charles Lindbergh, sir. But you can call me Lindy.
Nice to meet you, Lindy. Hope to see you again.
Lindy waves and runs off into the crowd. Cut to exterior airplane day, Super 1923. Joe is flying across the open countryside when he notices the fabric on the top wing is coming loose. He looks for a place to land and sees none. Joe watches intently as the fabric flops in the breeze. Suddenly a large piece rips off the wing and flies past his head, wrapping itself around the tail section. The plane drops a few feet as Joe fights to keep it in the air. He tries to use the rudder and discovers the fabric has wrapped itself tightly around the tail. Joe keeps flying, and in moments he spies a small clearing through the trees ahead. He banks the airplane slightly, and it responds, turning marginally. Joe figures out that he can still maneuver the airplane and works it in line with the small clearing. He descends down and into the trees, clipping the tops as he flies past. His wings break off tiny branches as they pass through. He settles down into the grassy clearing and rolls to a stop. He sits for a moment before shutting off the engine. Joe climbs out and inspects the fabric clinging to the tail. He unwraps it, checks it over for damage, then proceeds to lay it out flat, back on top of the wing where it came. He gets out his sewing tools and proceeds to repair the wing. Joe sews the piece back into place, then cuts a small patch and overlays the leading edge. He gets out a small cannon brush from the baggage compartment. Joe applies the dope to the seams. Afterwards, Joe inspects the rest of the airplane, looking for damage. Satisfied that the plane is damage-free, Joe sets the switches, spins the prop, and climbs into the pilot's seat. He taxis the plane to the far side of the clearing and turns around, facing the way he came in. Joe revs the engine up with full throttle, and as the plane lunges forward, he pushes the stick forward, then pulls it back just as the tail comes up. In just moments, he lifts off the ground. He aims the plane into the narrow opening in the trees, and as he passes through, the wings again brush the branches out of the way. He barely clears the trees and is soon free. With a sigh of relief, Joe turns the plane back into the direction he was previously on and sets the course. Cut to exterior Iowa State Fair, day. Joe flies over a sign that says Iowa State Fair. He circles around the area and settles down on the dirt strip where the other airplanes are parked. Joe taxis over to a spot with the others and shuts off the engine. Climbing out, he pushes his plane in line and ties it to the ground with the tie-down straps provided. As he is pulling out his camping gear and setting up his tent, a tall, thin man approaches him.
Hello, sir. Do you remember me?
Joe stands up and gives the lad a once-over.
Yeah, I think I remember you. Lindy, right?
Yes, sir.
They shake hands.
Well, what brings you here? I think the last time I saw you was a couple of years ago at the Wisconsin Fair.
You brought me here. Yeah, ever since you gave me that ride, I knew I was born to fly. I went home and bought me an airplane. Had to trade my motorbike for it.
No greater feeling in the world than to be free as a bird.
Taught myself to fly that old plane. Got it parked right over there.
Lindy points to the well-worn biplane across the taxiway.
You're here to fly in the air show this week.
Yeah, I've been flying around from fair to fair. Actually, I thought I would run into you sooner.
That's great, Lindy. Tomorrow, let's get together and review some of the stunts that we can do.
Fade 2, Exterior Iowa State Fair, Day. Montage of shots. Several airplanes fill the skies doing stunts. Joe and Lindy chase each other in dogfighting maneuvers. Back to scene. Joe is chasing Lindy. Joe's engine stutters, then quits. He circles around as he descends and lands with no power. The crowd looks worried. Joe climbs out and opens the engine cover. He grabs up his tools and gets to work. The other airplanes buzz overhead. Soon, Joe looks satisfied, closes the cowling, puts his tools away, and starts the engine up. Joe climbs back into his seat, and soon he is back in the skies, giving chase to the other airplanes. Cut 2, Exterior Airplane, Day. Montage of shots. Joe and Lindy flying at several fairs across the area around the Great Lakes states. Joe and Lindy develop a strong friendship flying the fairs. Looks of gratitude between Joe and Lindy as signs of state fairs flash across the screen. Cut 2, Exterior Indian Lake, Michigan, evening. Super, 1925. Joe is busy talking to the local sheriff. Joe's airplane is parked on the road near the lake. Several police officers and spectators are standing nearby. The vast lake stretches out past the horizon. Boats are scurrying about the waters just offshore, with police officers scanning the horizon.
Joe, we've been looking all day for the body of Joseph Bolka. We believe he drowned when he was out on the lake yesterday. You take one of the officers up in that contraption of yours and get a better look?
Yes, Sheriff, the lake looks a lot different from up there. I can cover a lot more area, too.
This is Officer Rex Risher. He's agreed to go with you.
The sheriff signals for Officer Risher to step up. He shakes hands with Joe.
Hello, officer. I'm Joe Donnellan. Have you ever been up before?
Nope, never tried that before.
Don't worry. It's safe.
Okay, good. You two are set then. Here, take this marker float in case you find the body. That way you can drop this out and we can find him.
Joe and Officer walk to the airplane. Joe gives direction for Officer Risher to sit up front. Joe sets the switch and gives the prop a spin. The engine fires up and smooths out to an even purr. Joe climbs in and they are off, climbing up into the sky. Cut 2, Exterior Airplane, later. Joe is buzzing 100 feet over the water, scanning in each direction. Officer Risher points off to the left. Joe turns in the direction. They fly in a wide circle. Joe thinks he spots something in the water. Officer Risher hollers back to Joe.
Hey, I think I see something down there.
Joe drops altitude till they are just skimming the surface of the lake. Joe makes a tight circle. Down in the water, about 20 feet in depth, is a body laying in the sand.
I see it. When I circle around again, drop that marker just before we pass over him.
Joe circles around, then lines up for a straight line to fly over the body. Officer Risher gets the marker ready and hangs it over the side of the airplane.
Okay, ready.
Hold on till I tell you to drop it. Now!
Officer Risher lets the marker drop. It splashes into the water, just a few feet from where the body lies. They fly around, and very close to a boat with 2 police officers in it.
See if you can get those officers' attention when we pass.
Officer Risher hangs over the edge of the airplane as Joe flutters past. Joe throttles back on the engine.
Hey, we found the body. Follow us.
Officer Risher is waving his arms. The 2 police officers wave back, then take chase in the direction Joe steers the airplane. Once it looks like they find the marker, Joe heads for the nearby airport. It is dusk when they arrive, and it is very difficult for Joe to see the runway clearly. He makes out the dark, straight runway and lines up, touches down and comes to a full stop.
Well, we made it just in time.
A few more minutes and I don't think we would have seen the runway.